Happy Friday morning, everybody, and thanks for checking into the Traded Black podcast. I am your host, Shad Dales. Today's podcast, lots to basically unpack. We will try to do our best. We're taking the words of Chuck Schumer and give you a great podcast. But wow, what an announcement yesterday, and it looks pretty bleak right now for safer banking. So let's jump into that and dive into a little of that conversation here on a Friday morning. And welcome in TDR co-host Anthony Varrell. Good to see you. How are things?
It's good. It's good. Last couple of days, there's just a lot of back and forth, and he said, she said, and letdowns, and it's all swirling right now. It was read yesterday, got a bad headline, or arguably bad news after market yesterday, and now the entire sector's green and trading
Isn't that
up.
crazy?
So, yeah, not a lot's making sense in the market. Not a lot's making sense on the regulatory front. It's kind of just you gotta take everything with a grain of salt.
Christopher Ratty, yes, all freshly shaved here on a Friday morning. CGC, I haven't looked to see how they're performing here this morning, but we got a lot of great feedback from that David Klein podcast from yesterday. A lot of positive stuff. So, you know, you get obviously the backing of a big company like Constellation that's in for the long haul. That is a big vote of confidence, I think, for the company moving forward, right?
Yeah, it was good. It was good to get David's perspective on CUSA. It was good to get the kind of definitive verbiage as per what the relationship means moving forward, how they came to this agreement via the exchangeables, and I mean, really what the outlook looks like for the Canopy USA vehicle.
Yeah. And then we'll get into obviously Mr. Schumer's announcement from earlier aftermarket yesterday, but we'll do our best. We will do our best. Don't you just love comments like that from Washington? That sounds not too secure, does it?
No.
No, I think that's a pretty good answer. All right, let's jump into it. Into the wire. TDR, Traded Black podcast here on a Friday morning. I'm your host, Shad Dales, with Anthony Varrell, and we begin with a number of state updates across the country. So let's first begin with South Carolina, where progress is being made on the medical marijuana front, potentially being legalized in the state. So, Anthony, it sounds like our good friend, Representative Mace, is doing her part for South Carolinians when it comes to cannabis. So what's the latest here?
Yes, I mean, this is great to see. This bill has been stalled since February, and now it's starting to gain traction. It's a GOP-led medical marijuana legalization bill that will bring medical marijuana to the state of South Carolina. It's Tom Davis in the bill. Tom Davis has been billed as strictly conservative, and I mean, there's several other GOP members within the South Carolina Senate that are getting behind this bill. I mean, it's good to see it get some momentum as it was kind of in gridlock.
Yeah.
And I mean, we'll be watching this closely as it progresses. I'd love to get Nancy back on to maybe reach out to her for comment over the weekend as per the follow through that we'll see in this update with the bill.
Yeah. Can you maybe dive a little deeper into like why this is important? Like, you know, let's face it, any state that's obviously going to pass is always an important and a good step in the right direction for all the overall health of the industry. But why, in your view, is this important?
Because it's a deeply red state. It's a state that has telegraphed that it doesn't want cannabis publicly available to its constituents. And I mean, it's just another domino to fall. I mean, we're getting caught up here in a lot of the regulatory stuff. With Schedule 3, with SAFE, and things that we really can't control. But at the same time, you've got South Carolina that's got positive momentum. You've got adult use that's got positive momentum in a lot of key states. There's another state that we're going to cover right after this, Louisiana, that's got a lot of momentum. Fundamentally, the sector is getting better by the day.
Of course.
It's just we can't get anything done from a regulatory standpoint that we desperately need to get done.
Yeah.
So while it does seem frustrating and it does seem like we're not in the best place possible right now, we are making progress, whether people want to admit it or not, day to day and week over week, moving forward with very few steps that we're taking back.
Man, I was down in Detroit yesterday at the NFL draft. I cannot believe how many people are actually accepting, understanding the overall industry. Like, it's growing rapidly, especially in a state that's doing $300 million in revenue on a per month basis. But yes, we get caught up in a lot of this narrative in Washington, but when you look at the grand scheme of things, it is definitely headed in the right direction. More and more people are understanding, but I think that's why it's just that much more frustrating, because it's like when you think of where we are today for the everyday people in comparison to what's going on in Washington, they're still back 40 years ago and so disconnected regarding this industry as to where we are today, right?
Yeah, I mean, as it relates to the regulatory stuff, I mean, we're speaking in hypotheticals,
Yeah.
on a day-to-day basis. We don't know what's going on at the DEA. We have no control over what's going on with SAFE. You get out there, you look at what the industry is doing and how it's impacting these states, how people are consuming the products, how the growth of the overall sector is going. I mean, that is concrete. We are growing day to day and week over week. That's not hypothetical. That's fact.
Yeah. Wooderson, you have some good comments here this morning. DEA holds the keys to the kingdom. End of story. Congress has no motivation to take action if the faceless agency can take the hit. You might have a point there.
That's a valid point. That's an absolutely valid point. I mean, if we didn't have the 255 pages from the HHS, I would firmly agree with him, or her. I mean, firmly agree with them on that. I mean, the DEA doesn't have to do anything. They don't owe us anything, but there's science and data saying that this archaic scheduling of Schedule 1 on the CSA as it relates to cannabis, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at all. Schedule 1 narcotics, the degree of cannabis use that's going on right now nationwide, if everybody was consuming that much of a Schedule 1 narcotic on a daily basis, we'd be in a very bad place.
Yeah, but you don't
right now,
you don't believe though on a 255-page redactment, I can't even talk here this morning, but unredacted. Sorry. You don't think based on that information that the DEA, I get what you're saying, that they don't owe the everyday American anything. However, when you have that kind of information, I don't know how people can apply that and think that, yes, like we are owed this to be rescheduled. So I think they know that. I don't think they're committed to that. I do think that nobody really wants to put their name behind any of this, and this is why it's being hesitant. But it'd be curious to see, like, what we're going to see in the next little bit here. Because right now, based on what Schumer's comments yesterday after market, it sounds like SAFER is just a waste of time at this point.
Yeah, and that actually wasn't Schumer that made the comments yesterday. It was a group out of Washington that put out a statement saying that essentially SAFE was DOA and not going to get attached to the FAA bill.
Yeah, well, I'll get into some quotes as to what he said after market yesterday as well. But regardless, the information started for what you're saying. And we'll dive into that in just a moment. This is Into the Wire, headline, the biggest headlines in cannabis here on a Friday morning. Coming up, we got Dan the Chart Man. As you said, Anthony, we get an announcement like that. And now stocks are in the green, but we're going to dive into MSOs, a few of the Canadian players as well, including Village Farms. Don't sleep on that right now. But next up, as we continue on a state's update, let's now move to the Aloha State in Hawaii, where a measure this week was rejected that would have increased the amount of cannabis a person. What can you fill us in on this, Anthony? And again, why this is important to know?
Yeah, I mean, this was a bill in the Hawaii Senate. It would decrim cannabis, wouldn't necessarily allow greater access to cannabis. The bill failed 15-9, marking the second defeat of the measure in the state's legislature. This is the second bill to legalize and decrim certain uses of cannabis that has failed within the last 2 months. And what I thought really was interesting here was their talking points.
Okay.
The argument against it was the bill would lead to increased youth access, discourage Asian tourists, fail to curb illicit market sales, and result in more automobile accidents.
Wow.
It's as if they're getting their talking points from Sam. Hawaii is a mostly blue state. I'm not sure why they're just vehemently against the decriminalization as well as greater access to cannabis. But I'm definitely curious to find out how this moves in the future. But those talking points, I mean, two of the four, you can take data and they aren't true.
Wow. The one that really grabbed my attention was discourage Asian tourists from visiting.
And that's verbatim. That's verbatim from their statement. So yeah. I would like to see how the legalization of cannabis has deterred Asian tourists from California since inception, which I would be willing to bet it hasn't, as there are plenty every time you go to the state of California.
Christopher Brady. Yeah, we won't bring that comment up, but yes, I see and understand what you're trying to say there. I would have loved to have gone back 100 years ago when alcohol first came onto the scene, if there was social media and the conversations that would have been had about what states would look at alcohol in a certain way. Like, again, I'm down at the NFL draft yesterday, and the biggest brands are just all over this. But meanwhile, as I'm talking to all these people, to your poll that you tweeted out earlier this week, that most people think that cannabis consumption is safer than alcohol. And it's just wild as to how a message and a Schedule 1 drug has been put into our brain for 50 years, and how many people just view it in a certain way. That is going to take time. But there was a comment here earlier that basically said I'm from South Carolina, and I definitely think it's a generational thing, which I think a lot of us know already, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's actually a really good point. I never thought about it. I'm actually going to look into that next week on what the social sentiment on alcohol consumption actually was coming out of prohibition, and what it really took to get movement on the topic.
I wonder, like, once it became legalized but completely acceptable, like, did it take 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? But yeah, to your point, it'd be interesting to find that out. But we are in the midst of this, and our children's children will look back at this era in life and just go, wow, I cannot believe I think cannabis was illegal at one time. That's where we're going.
I hope so. I'm sure as hell hope so.
Yeah, I think we all do, right?
I mean, I sure as hell hope so.
Yeah. All right. Next up, Louisiana, as you said earlier. And could we see the state grow from a medicinal market to an adult use based on news this week, Anthony?
Yeah, so I mean, this was big. The measure was pre-filed in March. It doesn't legalize adult use cannabis per se, but it starts the process of the foundation to build reform within the state. I mean, this is this is big. There's a lot to read into with this bill. For me, the bigger correlation or the bigger data point to correlate to this is Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, is from Louisiana.
Okay.
People have always hypothesized Mike Johnson might not be a friend of the cannabis industry. Mike Johnson might not want cannabis. Mike Johnson's home state is making moves to further their cannabis system. So I would say the same thing that I've said about Ron DeSantis when people say he's not a friend of the cannabis industry.
Yeah.
Well, Florida's built one of the largest medical markets in the country and added smokable flower under Ron DeSantis. Mike Johnson from Louisiana, cannabis is furthering its progression within the state. I'm going to watch it, see if this gets shot down and how this progresses. But from Louisiana and South Carolina to have momentum on the cannabis fronts, both adult use and medical, are big because those are very red conservative states.
You've always said
good dominoes to fall.
You've always said, regardless of what Governor DeSantis's views are, he is there to support the voters' vote, correct?
He's that himself. Even when he said those ass backwards comments about the adult use ballot initiative, he also said, I will leave it up to the people. If the people decide that they want it, and from a state's perspective, it gets ratified and gets moved forward, I'm for it. I'm not going to stand in the way of the people.
How much do you think this, like, when you think of Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, that if something were to pass like this, do you, like, if you were to, I don't want to say speculate, but if you're a betting person, like, how much of an influence do you think this would have on someone like that in the event that in his own state, does it have any kind of impact whatsoever or not really?
I think it has impact. I think it has. I mean, I'm not going to say it has big impact. I also think it's worth mentioning. But I mean, Mike Johnson is going to have a say into cannabis bills moving forward. He's going to have a say in SAFE to a degree. It'd be nice to know that he's not completely just anti common sense thinking as it relates to the plant.
Yeah. All right. That wraps up our first topic, states update. And now for the big one. Is SAFE dead? Next up, Chuck Schumer, aftermarket yesterday, and it sounds bleak when it comes to safer banking passing. We actually were going to have Eric Berlin from Denton's on here today to talk a little bit more about this announcement. We're actually pushing that till Monday based on a scheduling conflict for him today. But even he was basically saying safer does look a little bleak. But Schumer was saying, quote, "We have a bunch of different bills that we all have to work in a bipartisan way, and we'll do our best to get many of them done." He later said, quote, "We've got a lot to do, and if we can work in a bipartisan way, we will." That sounds about as uncertain as anything that I've ever heard at this stage of the game, knowing what we've been through in this industry. And this has created basically a domino effect amongst many people and their sentiment that follow this space that this is not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, yesterday after market, the U.S. Cannabis Council came out with a note that said that their sources indicate that the Safer Banking Act will not be included in the multi-pass FAA reauth bill. They understand that the provision, along with other banking priorities, such as the stablecoin bill, were deemed insufficiently germane to the aviation-centric package. Makes sense. These banking bills, such as SAFE, such as stablecoin, they have nothing correlated to the FAA bill, the FAA reauthorization bill that has to do with aviation. This is just the way the government works. We try to attach things and just force them through. After this getting shot down, I'm not going to focus on SAFE moving forward. I don't have any hopes for SAFE outside of Maxine Waters coming out and talking about it, attaching to the stablecoin bill. I'm not basing any of my decisions moving forward on SAFE, to be completely honest. If Chuck brings it up and it gets standalone, awesome. I'll start paying attention to it then. If it gets momentum and it gets attached to the stablecoin bill, I'll start paying attention to it. But for the next couple of weeks, as far as I'm concerned, SAFE, there's really nothing to talk about. Except for hypotheticals, which are just putting us in a worse place than we are right now. I mean, they're not. It looks like they literally are not going to get anything done as it relates to SAFE. I'm going to believe what they're telling me in real time.
There's a scene in the movie Slapshot. Have you ever seen the movie Slapshot? That's a classic movie.
No.
There's the Hanson brothers. Hopefully some of our audience has seen it. But there's this guy, Dave, that goes on the ice, and Dave gets hurt. And up until that season, the Hanson brothers have sat out the entire season. And the coach looks at all three of them and says, "Okay, boys, show me what you've got." And I think Dave, who basically got knocked out of the game, is safer banking. And we look at the Hanson boys, it's all about rescheduling. Show me what you got. Hopefully this comes to fruition and something can be done in the next couple of weeks here, because to your point from the podcast earlier this week, if we don't get safer and rescheduling is delayed or does not happen, who knows what the future holds for this industry, but it'll be very volatile times, right?
Yeah.
Anthony Cogniglio knows that scene I'm talking about in Slapshot. Anthony, you're looking at me like, what is he talking about?
I have
it is an amazing scene.
Anything you just said, I have no idea.
By the way, there's an image that actually is swirling around across the internet. Did you touch on that?
I read verbatim from the image at the beginning of the segment.
All right.
That's what I said about the reauth bill and what's they're non-correlated, so there's zero chance. Right. And I mean, obviously there was some questioning about if that was authentic. I mean, that organization, the U.S. Cannabis Council, it's a members only organization that's about $10,000 to $25,000 a year in dues. So I mean, it looks like it's a Cannabis Insider thing. I didn't believe it until Jason Wild came out this morning and also corroborated it and said, yes, that actually is true. So it's as far as I'm concerned, as far as we know, SAFE getting attached to the FAA is dead.
All right. Next up, topic number 3. As usual, people, keep these comments flowing in. Leave lots of comments. Also, smash that like button and make sure to subscribe to our Baked In newsletter. We have some additional information and bonus coverage with Mr. David Klein that you want to check out by logging on and subscribing to our Baked In newsletter, only available to our Baked In newsletter subscribers. And as I said, please like and share this video and make lots of comments so we can take this viral as we continue here on a Friday morning on Traded Black. And topic number 3, letter to the DEA. And it's probably the most important topic in today's podcast, and it's involving the health of the industry, of this industry moving forward, I should say. As I said, Anthony, it's involving rescheduling. So what can you dive into based on this letter and what it includes?
There's another letter on the 24th by Senator Warren and a group of politicians urging the DEA to reschedule cannabis. They've done this already. I think they did it on December 29th or January 19th, one of those dates before. DEA responded and said, we're going through the motions. I mean, it's good. It's continued pressure. Elizabeth Warren carries weight within the government. She's not going to stop until something is reached.
Yeah.
I'd rather her be doing this on behalf of us versus nobody doing it. The interesting thing was in the same article, there was a letter from the DEA to the two politicians stating that on April 16th, that upon their decision, there is going to be a comment period and a public opinion and comment period. On my belief, logically thinking, if you were going to slap down the scheduling recommendation and keep it Schedule 1 on the CSA, why would you have a public comment and a public hearing period? That doesn't really make sense.
So
it's just another breadcrumb. I mean, again, we're still speaking in hypotheticals.
Yeah.
But I mean, this also leads me to believe that they are going to come out with Schedule 3. It's going to be a proposed rule, and there will be a comment period and a public hearing period that follows.
Fred Gans, yes. Put the foil on. That is a great scene. But yes, to your point yesterday, and you tweeted that out, if there is public comments, you firmly believe, and again, this is just speculation, you don't know, you do believe that rescheduling is going to happen. Yeah,
I do. I firmly believe that rescheduling, it will happen. I don't know when, but I do firmly believe, judging by everything that I've seen and read, that rescheduling will happen at some point in time.
You think if the walls could talk in Washington, it's just like, for Schumer to say something like this yesterday, like they know it's only a matter of time before it is rescheduled. Therefore, is there really significance with related to SAFE?
Not sure. Not really, no.
Yeah, one can only imagine. All right, last, let's talk about an oral argument to be heard. A federal judge on Thursday agreed to schedule oral arguments in a case for major U.S. marijuana companies that are seeking to shield in-state cannabis activity from federal enforcement. What's the latest here, Anthony?
Yeah, so I mean, this is the Boys lawsuit that a group of cannabis, a group of MSO executives are behind. Canna Provisions v. Garland. It's being led by multi-state operators, Varrell Holdings, Massachusetts-based businesses, Canna Provisions, Wiseacres, Jason Wild's involved. There's a couple of other parties that are involved. And these oral arguments are actually set to be held May 22nd in the District of Massachusetts Western Division. This is going to be interesting because you're actually going to be able to see in these oral arguments the DOJ comment on, not directly, but the DOJ is going to give insight as to what's going on internally, publicly, as it relates to cannabis policy. This lawsuit, from my understanding, is challenging the constitutionality of the CSA.
Yeah.
Those oral arguments from the DOJ are going to have to cement why the CSA is constitutional in its right. I actually want to be in the courtroom when these oral arguments are put out. I was talking to Jason Wild last night. I was talking to you during our pre-production meeting. It would be great to be able to be on site in that courtroom to actually hear the arguments and then be able to get responses after the hearing, potentially from the DOJ and potentially from David Boyce, as it relates to the lawsuit.
Wonder if you could bring cameras in there for that.
It depends on the state by state law. They allow cameras into courtrooms, and for special situations, they don't allow them. Sometimes we can easily look that up.
And for people that are following this closely, that's date-wise the third week of May. You said, correct?
May 22nd.
May 22nd. All right. Well, we're going to be in Washington on the 21st. We're working that out. I don't want to put everybody be accountable for that, but it sounds like May 21st is the next trip that we're going to Washington. So we'll keep you all posted if that is the case, but actually that might work. because a flight to Massachusetts is what, half hour, 45 minutes?
Yeah, 30, 45-minute flight.
All right, that wraps up Into the Wire here on the Trade to Black podcast here on a Friday morning. As usual, like and subscribe and leave lots of comments. And it's time for segment number 2. Arns, cue the music. It's Fridays. Dan the Chart Man. We got no music coming up. There he is. Good day, sir. How are you? How are things?
Things are good. I'm robed up on a Friday and happy to be talking some charts. Look, it's got my initials.
Just look zen, relaxed on a Friday, just trading, having a good lifestyle, having a good life, living in good old North Carolina. You get the all 4 seasons. It's not too hot, not too cold. It's good to have the life of Dan the Chart Man, is it not?
Blessed.
Good stuff. Lots to talk about. You know, we had Chuck Schumer come out at the end of our aftermarket yesterday and pretty much put together some damning information. And of course, cannabis is in the green the following day. So you can't really predict these things, but let's dive into it. And I think the first chart we're going to bring up, which is the big heavy volume maker within the industry, is AdvisorShares MSOS. Let's bring that up right now.
Yeah, so we got the clear daily downtrend, but this is, you know, the hope for the bulls is that this is a falling wedge, and a falling wedge is a pattern that just shows bear exhaustion, where you hit a lower low, you get a bounce right after it, you hit another lower low, and you get a bounce right after it. One thing to note with these OTC names is I have a bit less confidence in technical analysis with them because of the lack of volume volatility that it has. And, you know, anything that has a lot of volume and volatility, I am much more confident in technical analysis, most likely scenarios taking place. But, you know, this is a potential falling wedge to be keeping an eye on. But the simple statement is if we do not break 902, nothing changes. The bears keep full control because that's where our last daily lower high was. So if we're just walking down the clear daily downtrend, it's a pattern of lower highs and lower lows. My mouse isn't working, but lower highs, lower lows, and the last one was 902. And so again, let's just keep it simple. If we don't break 902, nothing changes. The bears have control of the downtrend. If we break 902, it's the start of perhaps a bit of a shift in the short term. But anybody that's watched this sector trade over the last 2 weeks knows that it's full bear control at this point. These are very short-lived bounces. There's no real volume behind them, and that has to change if the trend is going to change.
Yeah. Are you thinking that the industry, you know, as you said, like we are reaching that fatigue kind of like mark right now, cause for any kind of like, you know, concern or thing you should watch for? Because as we all know, historically in this industry, it's the sell in May and go away type thing where you see a lot of dry up, you know, between May and the end of August and into September.
Yeah, I mean, summers for this sector have always been rough. It's always been late fall into the new year, voting seasons. That's when the time to get attention on this sector is. And I mean, we know where everybody stands right now. People that are in this are holding and going to ride a slow bleed and wait for news. And people have cash on the sidelines waiting for actual news. And they don't care if they need to buy 20, 30% higher and have the momentum at their back. And that's just where we stand. And in between, there's not much to happen. You know, there are some traders like me, but again, there's not many in this OTC space. We're focusing on Canopy and Aurora, which we'll get to in just a moment, having an immense amount of volatility today. And that just means opportunity for us.
Yeah, good point. All right, next up, I think it was Trulieve that I have the next chart. Is that, yes, Trulieve.
Yeah. So again, it's the same thing, you know, this little slow bleed kind of drop. That's a potential falling wedge. The level for me here is 1109. If we're going to see anything change, we got to get over 1109 and start to shape up a daily uptrend. And we are at risk of losing a weekly support here. We've been holding this weekly EMA 12 the whole way up. And what that would do is it would open up the door for me where the next time we bounce, we can possibly set a weekly lower high. Again, if we don't have the headlines, I am anticipating a slow bleed through summer. And I think a lot of people have that same mindset.
Yeah. Come on, rescheduling, right? All right, next up, we have GTI.
Same deal, similar pattern, slow bleed drop, potential falling wedge. We would need Monday and Tuesday to shape this up with some green in the sector. And I would need green thumb to get over 1275 for something to shift. Simple statement. If 1275 is resistance, nothing has changed. The bears have full short-term control of the very clear lower high, lower low pattern that has been intact for the last few weeks.
The big behemoth, that's for sure. And then staying on the MSO train, last up, we got Curaleaf.
It's a little bit different. I view this is what I would call an equilibrium, where you got your tightening range, lower high, higher low, lower high. We're getting real tight here. 469 base of support. Bulls need to get over 508 for a little short-term shift. I mean, one positive you could say out of the three that we just looked at, Curaleaf is holding a support level from a couple weeks ago, where the other two names have broken that level. And so it's just a slight difference in the setup. And, you know, if I look at Curaleaf compared to TCNNF, I'm sure it's been green a little bit here, which just means a little bit of relative strength creeping in between the two. Trading view is slow today. So just gaining a tiny bit of relative strength over the last few weeks. Nothing very significant, but again, if we have to discern those three setups in the here and now, if I had to say who's the strongest, Curaleaf is holding on a bit better. Okay, good to know. Next up, let's now switch north and dive into Canopy, which is, I don't get, like 3-4 weeks ago, it was just like where people are ready to jump off a cliff for this stock. We released an interview this week with David Klein that got a backing of obviously Constellation for long term. And now it's like things seem to be never better for this company. So it's back and forth, to say the least. Yeah, I mean, it's been a significant amount of control. We just went from 6 to 10 over the last week and a half. I mean, that is a 60-something% move. Yeah, it was a huge pullback, you know, almost 50% pullback. But as traders, this is what we love. Give us that volatility. And, you know, I anticipate the most likely scenario is the equilibrium. If this upper wick on today's candle keeps growing, that's going to potentially be a sign of a significant amount of profit taking to look for something like this to tighten up. But I got to highlight something I've been keep talking about on Twitter, where there is a volume signal on these names on the morning that is great to be acting on. And today, it led to me getting in and then a 10% move in the next 30 or 40 minutes. And it's just the volume pattern. The most common volume pattern on the 5-minute time frame is you have the highest amount of volume. This is yesterday, the highest amount of volume on the first candle, and then things settle down a little bit. It's the initial morning rush when the bell rings. That's what happens most often in all the charts that you're going to look at. What this sector will do is give an indication of, hey, this is different. Something is standing out. The first 5 minutes of volume was 146,000. The next candle was more than twice that. As soon as I see that, that is an indication to me something is unusual. That's very high bull volume. And as soon as you break the high of yesterday, 910, that's your go signal. You've got volume and you got a resistance break. And it's then literally straight up for 10%. And yeah, okay, people that want to dog technical analysis, I get it. I didn't predict anything. I actually made a post in our chat room this morning, and I said, I expect CGC to break the double bottom the last 2 days of 863 and start daily consolidation. I will be impressed if that level holds. That's the post I made. And I was wrong, dead wrong. And I still made money on the day because I reacted to new information telling me I was wrong. That is technical analysis 101 in a nutshell that people don't get. They think it's predicting. It's not, it's reacting. And so, okay, that's one example. Great. But there's two other examples since last Thursday. The other time it happened, it's every big bull day that it's had since last Thursday, 6 days of trading, has been this signal. It happened back here, highest volume of the morning, not the first candle. That's the unusual indication right there. You get the flashing light in your brain. Something's different. We shoot up for the next couple of hours. You go back to last Thursday, it happened there as well, where you get, again, just repeating the same pattern. You get the first 5-minute volume. It's the highest. Things slow down. Boom, big volume. That stands out. And from that point forward, hours of up. So it's not the kind of thing where you just blindly buy and hope when that happens. You buy and you set a stop. You say, I will risk $500 on this trade setup attempt. And so if I'm in, let's say I buy 5,000 shares at 910, 911 when resistance breaks, I put a stop at 899. If I'm wrong and we fade back, I'll lose $500. That's my accepted risk. But if I'm correct, there's the potential for 5,000. There's 10x the potential reward is what we got today in this example. So you have to establish your trade game plan as always and limit your risk because there will be a time that happens and it doesn't follow through. But it's great. Now 3 for 3 the last 6 days. And it's just, I love that signal because of how reliable it's been.
Dan, I mean, a lot of people have been talking about Canopy forming this golden cross, which, I mean, it's a lot out of my purview. From your point of view, I mean, is that a lagging indicator? Is that something that people should be looking at? Or how do you go about that kind of indicator that you're seeing in the chart?
Yeah, I don't use that at all. It's an indicator that uses the 50 period and the 200 period. And what it essentially is showing you is a longer term trend change. And people that, are on CNBC and using fundamental analysis as the vast majority of what they do, that's one thing that they'll look at and say, oh, well, the chart's doing this. And they're not technical analysts. I find that, price trends that you see me using all the time, they give you that information way before it happens. But it essentially is just a long-term downtrend. The 200 period will be trending down. The 50 period crosses it to the upside. So that tells you the shorter term action is changing. Okay. The shorter term momentum is changing. And that sometimes leads to longer term bottoms being set.
All right. Next up, we've had a few people reach out to us asking whether or not I'm going to have Irwin Simon on recently or relatively soon again. I have reached out and I'll keep you guys posted once we hear back from their team. But yes, we're very much wanting to bring their story onto our platform again. And in the meantime, let's take a look at their chart, Dan.
So again, it's the we talked about it last week, the cloud hanging over it since earnings that's just not allowing anything. This is a bear flag on the daily chart. The simple statement is if we do not break 187, this is a daily bear flag that we'll see another leg down. We have to break 187 to try and negate it. But again, just use it. Why is Tilray so much weaker than CGC and ACB? Yeah, you can point to earnings, but use me as an example. Today, in the chat room, all of us traders that are trading CGC and ACB today, nobody has mentioned TLRY once. And the reason is because there's relative weakness. There's no reason for us to be looking long this name right now. There's no resistances being broken. There's no volume. There's no momentum that's standing out. And so all these names that are giving the trading opportunity are going to get our money on. Again, it's just, we're day trading today, but that's where our focus is going to be. And until something changes, I mean, again, these comparison charts, pull up CGC divided by TLRY. How are these two names doing compared to each other? And we can just see absolutely massive outperformance of CGC compared to TLRY. I mean, that shift started 5 weeks ago and it's continuing.
Wow. When you visualize it and see it there, that is a real big eye opener.
Yeah. And it was weaker. I mean, this is CGC weaker than Tilray for a significant period of time. And 5 weeks ago, everything changed in terms of the relationship of these two names.
Wow. That's a huge difference. So a lot of chat right now online amongst Aurora and Canopy, to say the least.
That's where the volume, the momentum, and the intention is. But real quick I guess we'll bring up Aurora real quick. We've got a key level that keeps rejecting the price is 745 on the U.S. side of things. And if we can't close it, today, again, that upper wick, see back here, 745, 743, 742. And we've been breaking it just barely this week, but you can see clearly there's no price acceptance over that level. We test it, we break it just barely, we drop for 2 days. We break it just barely today, and now we're giving back the entirety of the morning move. And so the simple statement here is if we can't close a day over 745, we're not going to go very far because it's a line in the sand that the bears are clearly defending.
Yep. Friday morning, Traded Black podcast on with Dan the Chart Man. Leave comments below any charts you guys want us to bring up. Let us know as we have Dan on here. He's here for only a short period of time. So if you want to see some charts, let us know down in the comments section. Another chart I wanted to bring up too is Village Farms. You were talking this morning about this getting real tight. You want to emphasize on that?
Yeah. So again, one thing that technical analysis is great for is telling us when volatility is coming. The tighter you get, the volume drops off, ranges tighten up. And you know that what essentially is what is happening on this chart when you visualize just supply and demand. The scales of supply and demand are, I don't have much room here, balancing out. And this is a fair value right now. The market is saying, when you go sideways, the market is saying this is an evenly matched amount of supply and demand, and we're staying tight, fair value. And then that changes. You can only stay there for so long, and you're going to see a clear resistance break and a volume spike, or a clear support break and a volume spike. And again, I'm not, sometimes you can have favorability. The prevailing long-term trends can say, well, I favor this is going to break bullish because we're in a monthly, weekly uptrend. And otherwise, it's just waiting to react. It's waiting for the range to break. Show me whether we're going to see supply start to outweigh demand or demand start to outweigh supply. And probably next week, we'll see a break of this range. You can see today we just got right up towards that one.
This could go either way, is what you're saying.
Oh yeah, and again, people that dog technical analysis, well, duh. But again, it's just getting the clear levels that I can react to when a break takes place. And I know that VFF, earnings are coming up, so it's possible we trade sideways until earnings. Oftentimes, earnings are the catalyst for the break of nice, clear, tightening patterns. But if it's the kind of thing where I can set a volume alert, because I know if there's going to be a high volume day, if we see, the first hour of trading has twice the average volume of the first hour in the last week of trading, I know that we're likely going to break it that day. And that tells me, pay extra attention, because there's a lot of volume here and we're likely going to see the scales that are now evenly balanced flip one way or the other. And so, I don't trade VFF because it's just not enough volume. Yesterday, we traded like less than $500,000. It's not even close for me, but
really?
Yeah.
Okay. I had no idea their volume was that low.
Yeah. The average, because we had this big spike back here, the 20-day average volume is about 1.8 million. But yeah, yesterday, the day before, we're trading, $500,000 to $750,000 a day, which is nothing.
Okay.
Fatigue is setting in right now amongst traders in this space. 100% you're seeing that.
Yeah.
SNDL, that was another chart. Always get SNDL requests.
It's back above 2 again.
So let's see. So yeah, it's seeing a little bit of the upside that CGC and ACB are seeing. The big difference is, when one way you can compare individual names is retracement size. So from the high to the low just now, we've bounced about 38%. We've recovered 38% of that drop. And you compare that to, CGC, and we've recovered way more of that drop. And so I can say that, CGC much stronger on this bounce attempt, as that's not right. But as we're talking here, this daily candle for CGC is just getting worse and worse with the profit taking. I was all out on the $10 break because for me, this has exceeded my target. I'm really liking the gains on the morning, and that's that. And it's looking like a daily lower high is going to be shaping up for consolidation next week. But as far as SNDL, again, same thing here. We had this 208 resistance level that is now a double top. That was the initial bounce high. We rejected today. And if the bears are going to take back over, the low of yesterday, 194 breaking, will be a red flag that the bounce is topped, and we're heading back to test the recent lows.
Okay, good to know. I think that pretty much explains a lot of great charts here this week. Very informative, actually, this week. But, I think the big thing for me, the takeaway is just the trends of like opposite directions regarding Canopy and Tilray and what you're seeing. That was a big eye opener to visually actually see that. But as usual, always appreciate the feedback, Dan.
Yes, sir. I hope you all have a great Friday, and I'll put out a weekend video where I'll talk about all this stuff in depth as always, probably tomorrow. So check for that as well.
Got any big plans for the weekend besides that?
Yard garden stuff, putting the tomatoes, cucumbers, squash, eggplants. It's just getting warm enough to risk it a bit, putting those things out in the ground.
Nice. Well, listen, appreciate it. Let's check back in next Friday, okay?
All right. See you then.
All right. Thanks
sir.
Stan. Always extremely helpful. That was what a chart trend between the two companies that grabbed my attention.
Yeah, it's good to have those insights on Canopy. If Canopy's telegraphing when it's going to move, at least people will know. They can kind of play it otherwise. But it's retraced a decent amount. It was up 15%, I think, within the first hour of trading. Now it's up about 6%.
You could feel it actually this week, I think, for sure. Both you and I could see the fatigue that was setting in. But, listening to him right now, I definitely think that, it just reiterates as to like what we were probably thinking. And with May being the next month, this is going to be a slow bleed over the summer if we don't get rescheduling. But I'm hopeful it will happen.
Let's not talk about that yet.
I know. I hear you. Before we go, I wonder how our good friend Guap's doing. It's been, a week now that he's been?
He left on 4/20, so he's been gone for 6 days now.
Well, Guap, if you see this video, I know you're on your honeymoon, but if you get a chance to see this in Scotland anytime, just want to let you know we're thinking of you, buddy. If you're stressed out about the industry, you should just play this music. You are off to a boys' trip this weekend, and it sounds like a blast. What's it going to be?
We're going to Pinehurst. I'm actually going to Guap's neck of the woods, to North Carolina.
Nice. I will let you know, and we're going to have a video up this weekend. I was doing a bunch of interviews on the street yesterday down in downtown Detroit at the draft. After one of my interviews, who walks by? Guy that has the biggest podcast in the U.S., Pat McAfee. So I yell over to him, Pat, what do you think of cannabis consumption? Log on tomorrow. You're going to love his reaction. It's absolutely hilarious. Talking about being in the right place at the right time. But one thing's for sure, when that man went on stage, he knows how to turn around and basically control and run a crowd. That guy is unbelievable as to how much he gets engaged. But you can understand why people love the guy.
100%.
Well, listen, you enjoy your trip up to North Carolina golfing this weekend. For all of our viewers out there, I appreciate, as usual, as I said, left a link in the comments section. Make sure to subscribe. I'm actually going to be sitting down with our lead analyst, Bill McNarland, this weekend. We're kicking off a small cap show. We want to bring to you guys stocks that you may not be aware of and why they should be grabbing your attention. So we're going to be launching that and executing that every single weekend and doing in-depth research reports that we're going to be pushing out throughout our network. So make sure to log on. I'll give you more details in our community chat group as to when we're going to actually launch that show this weekend. Probably be Sunday night at 8 o'clock. And then as usual, as I said before, subscribe to our newsletter to get all that information regarding the companies. As usual, click like, subscribe, and leave lots of comments as we want to take this video viral. That's it. Enjoy the rest of your day and enjoy the weekend. And we'll check back with you guys on Monday.
Talk to you later, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching our latest podcast. Lots of momentum building. You guys getting all excited? Leave comments below. Again, we want to take this viral. Smash that like button and make sure to click on that bell for all notifications as we start to bring on bigger and bigger guests. Don't forget to subscribe to our daily newsletter, the Baked In newsletter, by logging on to thedalesreport.com. And we want to take this viral, as I said, and make this community grow. So make sure to subscribe on that channel because we wouldn't be here without you. Thanks again, everyone, for watching.